Welcome to Shattering Stereotypes. I'm your host, Jerry McLaughlin. Roger Stone was just handed a 40-month prison sentence by Judge Amy Berman for allegedly telling lies. And this was for a first-time offense, if he even did that. The question is, did the punishment fit the purported crime? President Trump believes the sentence was too harsh. Judge Jackson, she is suspending the ruling temporarily until she hears Stone's motion asking for a new trial. But clearly, President Trump wanted a reduced sentence, and he's not happy. Tucker Carlson has strongly hinted that the presidential pardon was in the wings. Attorney General Barr said during an interview, President Trump's ongoing tweets, he says, were difficult for him to do his job, which may have contributed to the harsh sentence. But for a 67-year-old man, is it fair he would be out when he turns 70? It could be theoretically a life sentence. We don't know. So to better understand the sentencing and the procedure, we've invited Attorney General from Nebraska, former Attorney General Don Stenberg, to talk about what his compatriot, Attorney General William Barr, might be going through. And welcome, Don Stenberg. First question I have is, do you believe that the 40-month sentence, the prison sentence, was appropriate for the for lying under oath? If he did.
Well, yeah, you've got to take into consideration all the circumstances, and I think if you do that, in my opinion at least, that was excessive. I mean, he has a clean record up to this point. To the extent that he was not truthful, it didn't seem to have any impact on any other legal proceeding. And so it did. In my judgment, it's still an excessive sentence.
Okay, what is involved with the suspended sentencing that until Judge Jackson rules on the Stone's motion for a new trial? Does that mean that Stone will not get prison during this waiting time? What happens during this limbo time?
Well, that would be my understanding. I guess we'll see how that plays out. But clearly, he will not begin serving his sentence until the judge has decided that motion for a new trial, which is, I understand it is based on some bias on the part of the jury. Jury foreman had sent a number of messages prior to the trial that were very negative toward Trump and so forth.
Right. I think the term is alleged juror misconduct. So what are the odds of a new trial being granted based upon that?
Well, that's a great question. I don't know what the district judge will do here, and I don't really have a basis to speculate one way or the other. But at least what's been in the news would lead me to think that if the trial judge doesn't grant a new trial, that it's fairly likely that an appellate court would. You're supposed to have an unbiased jury, and I think there's certainly some evidence here that was not the case.
Well, even if he got off scot-free, going through the procedures, going up to the appellate court, everything else, it still kind of wreaks havoc on your life. I hear he lost his wife over this, lost all of his money, or a lot of it and stuff like that. I mean, it takes a toll financially and physically and emotionally, does it not?
Well, it certainly does, and we've seen that with several folks. Maybe the very worst example, in my opinion, probably is General Flynn and the way that he has been treated here. In his case, the FBI knew before they interviewed him what he had said in his conversations with the Russian ambassador, because they were listening in on those. So I think he was treated extremely unfairly, and of course, it cost him a lot of money. And I think the only reason he pleaded guilty is running out of money, and they were threatening his family.
Now, Trump, as we all know, has tweeted a lot and quote unquote intervened, depending on whose perspective you look at. Do you think he had a right to do that? I mean, did he have a right under freedom of speech, or does that get abated when he become president? And Attorney General Barr was talking about not being able to do his job with all this onslaught of tweets. Respond to that if you can.
Well, certainly, number one, of course, the president has First Amendment right to express his opinion on these issues, but probably even more fundamentally in the case of the president, his Article 2, Section 3 duties under the U.S. Constitution are that he shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed. And one of the principal ways that a president makes sure the laws are faithfully executed is through the actions of the United States Department of Justice and the U.S. Attorney General. So President Trump, when he says he has every constitutional authority to speak directly with the Attorney General about the case, if he chose to do that, although he has not, he's absolutely correct that under the U.S. Constitution, he has that authority.
So it's much ado about nothing then, and the media is just blowing this out of proportion, and the Democrats are blowing it out of proportion. Is it one of those situations where if you present something disingenuously like that, loud enough, long enough, often enough, that the average person, Joe Q public, believes it, perhaps?
Well, it certainly seems that that's the strategy here. The president had every right to comment. Certainly, Attorney General Barr, in his judgment, the original sentencing recommendation from lawyers in the Justice Department was excessive, and as the head of the department, he has final authority and responsibility to determine what the recommendation will be, and he exercised that authority, which he unquestionably has. So I think all these, I think the resignations, that's fine if they want to resign, but General Barr did exactly what he had the authority and legal right to do. And then we have this petition. I don't know how many people have signed it now.
1,000, I heard.
That, a lot of them. So complaining about apparently the fact that the Attorney General exercises his authority to make decisions on behalf of the government of the United States, which is what he has authority to do, to refer to a comment that was made during the Watergate hearings way back when. And the Attorney General is not a potted plant. He's there to oversee the operations of the Department of Justice and to make final decisions on these kind of questions.
Yeah. Now, of course, the Donald could trump the race and do a pardon. Would he be justified in pardoning Roger Stone, you think?
Well, under the Constitution, the president has unlimited authority to grant a pardon to pretty much anyone, and certainly anyone he feels has been mistreated by the justice system or received an excessive sentence or whatever. Fairly recently there was a woman who basically had been sentenced to life in prison for basically a first-time drug offense, and the president pardoned her basically because it was very excessive sentence and it was very unfair. So the president has done this in previous cases, and he could well do it with Mr. Stone. Of course, I don't know what the president ultimately will decide.
But I don't understand. Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi seemingly are lying with impunity, and then on one lie, they could throw a guy away in jail for 40 months. What am I missing here? Why is it that Adam Schiff can get away with it and Stone cannot?
Well, that's a great question. We just had Mr. McCabe, formerly with the FBI, who the Inspector General had found did lie to FBI agents, and yet he was recently not prosecuted by the Department of Justice, despite the fact the evidence was very clear that he had lied. So there's certainly unfairness, and it seems to mostly go against people associated with President Trump these days.
Yeah, it does. I remember Elian Gonzalez, and he had those famous pictures with a weapon, automatic or semi-automatic weapons fired against him, taking him back to Cuba. And the same thing with Roger Stone. It looked like they were ready to shoot him, literally. Did you see that on TV when they're making that arrest?
Well, yeah, CNN covered that. It's interesting how they would have found out about it. But yeah, I mean, that was clearly excessive. I forgot exactly how many agents and armored vehicles and everything else were involved, but it was a lot, and for no reason, for a an alleged crime that didn't involve violence, a first-time offender.
Yeah.
It was put on, I think, for the show of the thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess his big crime is he was a big Nixon supporter to the degree that I understand he's got a full body tattoo on his back of Richard Nixon, going like this. That's why you see Roger going like that all the time. I don't know. Time will tell where it goes from this. So anyway, I mentioned this to you in prior conversation that sometimes the devil is in the details. And speaking of the devil, you've got a book out called Eavesdropping on Lucifer. Now, I've got a dog named Lucy, and sometimes I wonder why I named her that, because it could be construed as for Lucifer. But all kidding aside, Lucifer, the devil, Sleuthfoot, Satan, whatever you want to call him, does he get involved in politics? I mean, there's a lot of people talking about, does God get involved in politics? And I'm going to say, does the devil get involved in politics? And you got a book called Eavesdropping on Lucifer. Tell us what's in your book. Tell me your theory on the devil and spiritual things, and never shall the twain meet, or is there an intersection there in Washington?
Well, yeah, the book is called Eavesdropping on Lucifer, and basically it reviews the devil is talking to his would-be apprentice, and describes how he has been able to change the culture in the United States, from taking down Ten Commandment monuments to abortion on demand, to restrictions on religious freedom. And so basically the theme of the story works through discussions that Lucifer has with his apprentice, and how in the history of the United States, religion played a major part. The Supreme Court was very supportive of that. And then basically the concept is that Lucifer is very subtle. He doesn't show up in front of you and say you should do this or that. On the contrary, he tries to put ideas in people's heads that it would be a good thing. Abortion, for example, would be a good thing because it relieves a woman of the responsibility of raising a child, when what we're really talking about is killing a small human being. So those are some of the examples. But Lucifer relies on desire for power in the case of politics, desire for money on the part of others, jealousy. One person for another, you shouldn't be jealous of what your neighbor has. Well, Lucifer kind of takes the opposite view of that. And we see that a little bit today in the idea of socialism, that there's other people have what you don't have. And so we're going to change that kind of thing.
Isn't that essentially covetousness? Socialism?
Exactly.
Take from one and give it to another?
Exactly.
Yeah. It's amazing how many of the so-called 10 commandments, I like to look at them as 10 loving fatherly guidelines for his children. I think in original Hebrew, there's no word for obey. So it's really more accurately guidelines. But in the Big 10, we'll call them, I mean, don't make a lifestyle of lying or stealing or coveting or, you're not struck down for lightning for one. It's essentially a lifestyle. You're either a liar or a coveter or whatever. And socialism is like institutionalized covetousness. I just don't understand how people could do that. There's a question I've never asked on an interview ever, but I've wondered it often, is what would happen if you just gave all the Bernie Sanders followers exactly what they're asking for? Take all the money from the rich and give it to the poor, and now they're rich. Now what's supposed to happen? Do they get to keep the money, or is it like a volleyball game, back and forth, the money? Do they keep giving it back to each other?
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. I should mention that one section of the book does go through, as Lucifer talks to his apprentice, about how several of the 10 commandments are designed to make life on earth more pleasant and more peaceful for everyone if everybody would follow them. And of course, Lucifer doesn't like that idea at all.
Yeah, he's come to rob and kill and destroy. Nothing's changed. He's plays on our ego. He plays on our greed. I mean, he'll come out to one person and say, I'm going to give you your own TV show or make you a rock star, but then there's a fine print. Yeah, as we know, the hook, the barbs of the hook go in more easily than they come out. And sometimes you just got to rip it out and flee from whatever it was that was a Satan bait. Well, tell us where we can get a copy of your book, Eavesdropping and Lucifer. And I know it's not officially out yet, but can you pre-order it? How does that work?
Well, it's you can pre-order it on Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com, and you can find out more about the book on our website, which is the same as the title of the book, Eavesdropping on Lucifer.com. And so we'd encourage people to pre-order it, and hope they'll find it very not only thought-provoking and interesting, but also it's written in an entertaining style that's fun to read. Okay,
I'm going to leave the parting question and answer up to you. Anything to do with the book or anything to do with the sentencing of Roger Stone, or any wise counsel for anybody seeking to go into politics even. You were an attorney general. I mean, the average person watching this, they watch the whole thing, maybe got their creative juices going, the political juices flowing. What would you have to say in parting to them?
Going into politics, well, number one, you better be ready for criticism, because even if you're doing what you think is right, there's always somebody who's going to tell you that you're wrong. And I think Bill Barr knew that, and he's certainly seen some illustrations of that. I think he's doing an absolutely outstanding job as the U.S. Attorney General. I think he's very, very thoughtful and smart and decent man. He's trying to do his best, and I think this criticism is very, very unfair.
Well, it's been a pleasure, and we're going to have you back to discuss the upcoming Supreme Court case that would be similar to, well, I mean, you had a Supreme Court case yourself, a partial birth abortion case that went to the Supreme Court in 2000, got overturned because we didn't have a 5-4 majority. It was the other way around back then. But we'll have you back for that. And thank you very much for joining us. I hope everybody enjoyed it. Please share, please comment. You don't see stuff like this on MSNBC or CNN. So take advantage of your free speech, viewers, and share this with somebody, comment on it, spread the word, and we'll see what comes of Roger Stone and his request for a new trial based on the foreman of the jury deciding to go tweeting or Facebooking or whatever social networking and stuff like that. Somebody didn't send a memo over there that you're not supposed to do that. Take care until next time. Thanks for joining.
Yeah. Thanks.